Hello and good afternoon and welcome. My name is Silvana Muscella. I'm founder CEO of Trust IT and the coordinator of ICT Footprint. You are with us at our fourth webinar at the moment, and we're gathering great momentum, and we're very, very pleased to have put in place a mechanism that's gradually gaining wonderful traction in our community. What I'm going to do is tell you all a bit about ICT Footprint before we start, but I can't move forward. Yes, I can move forward the slides. I thought I couldn't. Those of you who are unfamiliar with ICT Footprint, we are a coordination support action project funded under Horizon 2020 of the European Commission, and our aim is to help our community who are sensitive to energy efficiency issues worry about the ICT part, and we want to try and put together a series of tools, services, marketplace that helps put in place how ICT defining products that help us take down our energy efficiency. And today we're pleased to have with us three wonderful speakers who are going to zoom in and look at areas of actual services or products that they're worrying about in their project or as part of a product that they're dealing with in their organization, and outreach this information to our audience. Now, our speakers are Frédéric Croisson, who's a manager at Deloitte Sustainability, and Deloitte is one of our partners, together with Trust IT Services and Eurocities, of ICT Footprint, and is one of the prime authors of putting together the self-assessment tool around services that he will be discussing today. Our second speaker is Karen Robinson, who is a project manager of another Horizon 2020 project called Save at Work, who's from the 7Y Energy Agency. And our third speaker is Thomas Corvaisier, I hope I've pronounced that well, who's the CEO of GreenSpector, and I'll introduce a little bit more about them before they then go on to speak. So, without further ado, let's have a look at what ICT Footprint is in a nutshell. So we want to be the European project that helps raise awareness around ICT methodologies, best practices in measuring energy and environmental efficiency of the ICT sector. And we've listed here who our major stakeholders are, and we want to be able, with the tools then that we put into place, is help you choose your low carbon and energy efficiency in ICT. Now, one of the areas that we look at specifically is in the development of a marketplace on ICT Footprint that is already up there and available. So if you go onto ICTFOOTPRINT.eu, you will see that there's this growing marketplace divided into buyers and sellers. So with this, I want to pull out an opportunity for you all that if you're a buyer and you want to find sustainable ICT suppliers, I suggest you go and take a look at this. And likewise, if you're a seller, like Thomas with GreenSpector in the case of today's webinar, and you want to publish your sustainable services, you can search for a series of clients on this marketplace. Now, we're looking to outreach to around 5,000 profiled stakeholders from the different categories that I mentioned before, and our project began last February 2016, and even with the numbers that we're seeing who are attending just our webinars, we're seeing that we're consolidating a community of like-minded people who are interested in worrying about their ICT, lowering their carbon footprint in ICT in their organizations. So we see this is gaining momentum. The other outputs that ICT Footprint will look at are the webinars that we have today, a help desk, which is will be available in 5 languages. We're putting together a series of different success stories all around the globe of best practices in sustainable ICT. And what we're going to focus in today is this self-assessment tool that Frédéric will look at immediately, that looks at measuring your own carbon footprint. So, with that, I would like to pass the floor now to our first speaker, who's Frédéric Croisson, and he will showcase the self-assessment tool for services, a useful, quick and easy tool that looks to calculate carbon footprint of your ICT services. So over to you, Frédéric. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silvana. I hope everybody can hear me. So as Silvana just introduced, I will present you the self-assessment tool for services, ICT services that we are developing in the frame of the ICT Footprint.eu project. So just a short presentation. So I'm Frédéric Croisson from Deloitte Sustainability, based in Paris, and I'm a specialist of environmental footprints and in that case applied to the ICT sector. So regarding the self-assessment tool we are developing, we targeted initially several type of stakeholders of the sector. First, we are targeting ICT-intensive organizations, that is to say, organizations using ICT for their business. For example, online commerce, online newspapers, any online web platforms, etc. We are also targeting developers and ICT system integrators within organizations providing ICT services to other companies. For example, customized software solutions organization. We are also targeting ICT services provider, for example, in large companies. So, and other stakeholders interested in knowing more about the environmental aspects of ICT products and services. So for the moment, we only focused on ICT products and services, and we will, in another, and I will have a word on that at the end of the presentation, we will also propose later a tool to assess the environmental impacts of the ICT activities within an organization, which is another type of approach. So, the self-assessment tool for services, ICT services that we are developing now in the ICT Footprint.eu project is a simplified tool for mainly awareness raising among the stakeholder of the sector on the ICT impacts of the environmental impacts of ICT services and products. So if we go into details regarding the goals of the tool, the self-assessment tool, so first of all, this tool is mainly made available in order to raise awareness on these issues of environmental impacts of ICT services. Then we can also use the tool to identify the environmental hotspots of a product or service. For example, the idea is to provide a tool to make possible identifying where are the environmental impacts of an ICT services. Is it at the end user device when the end user use the service through his device? Or in other steps of the service, for example, the data center impacts or the transmission network, etc. And finally, we can also use the tool as a simplified key environmental performance indicator tool to monitor in a very simplified way the environmental impact of the service assessed. Just to be a little bit more precise on the goals, the tool is not intended to make detailed eco-design or continuous improvement activities. Neither it can be used for environmental communications through, for example, environmental product declaration, or to make very mandatory corporate or site environmental reporting. For those applications, the tool is too simplified to make possible to use the tool to these applications. So here, what we have to keep in mind is that the tool is a simple one, but it's very fit for awareness raising on the environmental impact of the ICT services and products. Regarding the methodological background implemented in the self-assessment tool for services, the main methodological choices are based on existing recommendation in standards or guidance. For example, we used the GHG protocol for the ICT sector guidance. We also consult and inspired the methodology on the ETSI 203.199 standard and also the standard, but the idea of the tool is to implement some key methodological points, elements from those standards, from the existing standards, but we can't say that the tool is fully compliant to one specific standard. The idea is to follow the main, the key methodological points, but the assessment made cannot be claimed to be compliant to a specific standard. I think this is very important to precise, because some of you may be familiar with LCA, so sometimes in LCA reports we claim compliance to existing standards, for example for the ISO standard for LCA. So here it's not the main goal of the tool, and the important thing is to keep in mind that the methodological background of the tool is based on the key principles of the main standards of for the ICT sector environmental footprint. So basically, the methodology implemented in the calculation engine of the tool is based on a multi-criteria and a multi-step approach. So the tool makes available the calculation of two environmental issues. The first one is the well-known climate change indicator impact. And so we also call it the GHG emission indicator. And the other indicator that can be assessed with the self-assessment tool is the primary energy consumption, or we also call this indicator the cumulative energy demand. So for the moment, we can assess these two indicators because they are judged as the main, the most important indicator for the sector. But it could also be extended to other impact category, for example, resource consumption other than energy. But for the moment, as the tool is a simplified one, we decided to focus on those two indicators in order to make a very simple methodology and to focus on the main environmental aspects that are the most known for now. The other main background element is that the assessment methodology is based on the multi-step approach. So we implemented in the tool the scope considering various steps of the life cycle of ICT services. So maybe in the next slide we have a more detailed description of the scope. So regarding the scope of the system assessed in the self-assessment tool, we have two axes of analysis. The first one is what we call the building blocks axis. Building blocks is just defined in the GHG protocol ICT sector guidance. And the main building block that we implemented in this version of the self-assessment tool are the end user building blocks, the transmission network one, the data center block, and the office operations block. So the results calculated by the tool are split according to these various building blocks. And the second axis of analysis is the life cycle step as defined in the LCA standards methodologies. So the first, we consider three life cycle steps: the production step, the use step, and the end of life step. So those life cycle steps referring to all the ICT equipment used to provide the services under assessment. Regarding the scope of the assessment, but if we consider more what type of services can be assessed with this version of the self-assessment tool, we can say that from now we limited the scope to only web-based services. So, for example, any platform using online technologies can be assessed with the tool in a very simple way. And of course, we could have developed other version of the tool, for example, to allow the assessment of an ICT device, for example, a computer, a smartphone, a laptop. But for the moment, we try to focus on one type of service, because of course the model developed in the calculation engine will be specific to the type of service. So we choose to focus for the moment on online services because we think that it could be understood and used by a more broader audience than only, for example, ICT equipment or devices. The general principle of the self-assessment tool is the same as any LCA or environmental footprint tools. The first element is that we will consider a questionnaire open to the user of the self-assessment tool. So the questionnaire is quite simplified here because we only ask 12 questions to the user. So it's a question regarding, for example, the functional units, some use pattern data of the service, for example, the duration of the use of the service, the amount of data exchanged during the use of the service, etc. And with those data, those data are fed in the calculation engine, and using other expert parameters, for example, parameters regarding the power of the ICT equipment used to access the services, and this kind of very technical, let's say technical parameters. We use those data with impact factors, what we call impact factors, that is to say the embedded environmental impacts of elements. And we multiply the data feed into the questionnaire to this impact factor to calculate the impacts, so the GHG emission and the primary energy consumption. So this is the very basic principle. I will skip some slides because I just put some screenshots of the tool to give you an idea of the type of outcome that we can expect from the tool. So, for example, we have the some graphs on the GHG emissions and the energy consumption according to the two axes that I developed earlier in the presentation. And we also we have different types in the tool. And regarding the launch of the tool, so the first version of the self-assessment tool will be provided and we will make available beginning of the month of March. And we are also working on another version of the tool, the self-assessment tool for organizations, that will be launched later in 2017. So we will have to get a more precise timeline for the launch of this other version of the tool. So I think I'm done with the presentation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them. And I think I can end it now. Silvana, it's okay for the timing?
That's very good. Thank you very, Frédéric. Thank you very much for keeping to timing. Well, before we go over to see if there are any questions from the audience, I have a couple, if I may. One is, what is the main objective in putting to the market a tool such as the self-assessment tool for services?
Yes. So the idea of this tool was to make available a very simple and free of charge tool on the market to mainly ICT providers, ICT suppliers, because we found out in a previous study and with a previous survey that only a few stakeholders are aware of this kind of methodology, so environmental impact assessment methodology, and tools for the ICT sector are not specific to this sector. So there are some very expert LCA software today, but not intended to be applicable only to the ICT sector. So we wanted to provide a very simple tool to have a first idea of what it takes to implement or to assess an environmental footprint of an ICT service. Perfect.
That makes perfect sense. Second question, see one up from the audience, so I'll ask that before I ask my second one. How will SMEs be incentivized to use the self-assessment tool? This is a very good question. None of us have time. I'm an SME. I hate to be asked to be doing anything. So how are we going to get over that, in your opinion?
Okay, sorry, I was muted. So regarding the incentive through SME, the idea is to make available this free of charge tool. So any SME, because LCA and environmental footprint are quite costly methodologies to implement. So we wanted to make available this tool to really any stakeholder, also SMEs, in order to make them aware of the implementation of the environmental the environmental footprint methodologies, but free of charge and also with non-expert knowledge required to manipulate the tool. I don't know if I answer well this question, but
so Frédéric, sorry, I was mute. That's precisely that's precisely fine. But that was linked to another question I wanted to ask. Who's the type of person who has to fill in this type of form? Is he or she a decision maker, or is it more of a technical profile who would fill this in?
Yes. So as I told during the presentation, so this is a very simplified tool. So the user only have to fill in 12 questions, and globally those questions are not very technical ones. So anybody can, I would say that any actor can use the tool, but of course for some data it should refer to more technical profile within the either within his organization or with any suppliers, in order to get some data, for example, on the volume of data exchange or some kind of parameters like that. It could be useful to have a more technical profile, but basically any profile can use this tool.
Okay, Frédéric, I'm going to have to speed up because questions are getting fired at before moving on to our next speaker. But I have two interesting questions that have come in from our audience. I'll start with the last one. It says, which is a fair comment, which value could have this assessment in the ICT landscape if it's not certified standardized, stroke standardized?
Yes. So this is a good question. So as I presented at the beginning of this presentation, the idea of the tool is not to make not robust but standardized and certified calculations of services, but the idea is more to raise awareness on methodologies by using a simplified tool to see what does it take to launch this kind of assessment. So it's true that the results are not certified. This is not the objective of the tool, but it's the first approach of environmental footprint methodologies, I think. So it's more a pedagogical tool to the ICT sector.
I think if I may also add something there, Frédéric, we have as part of ICT Footprint a very high-level expert group of externals who we engage with regularly about the ICT methodologies used, but you know, they either represent FDOs or other reputable organizations. I think, you know, along the line with discussions with them, I think the discussion has come about with, you know, how could we try and get some sort of endorsement also with the backing from these individuals who maybe, you know, that can vouch for a tool like this that will clearly add value to the relevance and importance of this. There's one quick last question. I don't know how easy this is to answer, but in very briefly, it's how do you calculate the energy usage carbon footprint of a cloud service? What kind of KPIs are you using?
So
you want to think about? Go ahead.
Sorry. So if I understand well, the question is that within the scope assessed for the service, the ICT service assessed, there is a data center block. So in this block, we use, of course, generic data for data centers that come from the literature on the average impact per, let's say, per volume of data, unit of volume of data. And this is a more, this is a generic data, so a kind of black box model that has been used for this version of the tool, because it's very difficult to develop a full-scale model of data center or cloud globally. So that's why we are using only generic data in this assessment tool.
Okay, thanks, Frédéric. I'm going to stop you there, and I do appreciate we have 2 more questions from the audience. I'm going to save them till last, otherwise I'm going to shave time from our other 2 speakers. So let's keep them here, and we'll tackle them at the end. Thank you very much, Frédéric. Thank you for your intervention. Thank you. We're going to move on to our second speaker. I'm already going forward. I do apologize, Karen. That's me. Let's go back. Right. With every little helps. Now, Karen is the project manager of the Save at Work initiative, and this project encourages public sector employees to come together in teams to reduce energy consumption of their building by making small changes to their everyday energy-consuming behaviours. Now, this is something that's obsessing the digital single market agenda, apparently, lately, on human interaction, human intervention, what we're doing, you know, because of the phenomenon of digital technology. So we're very interested in listening to how these results are coming about. Project started back in February 2015 and actually ends this year, August. So without further ado, over to you, Karen. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Right, hello. Right, yes, so I am the project manager for this particular, for the UK partner. So 7Y Energy Agency is the UK partner of this European funded project. And I'll go forward, she says, yeah. So Save at Work is funded through Horizon 2020, the Research and Innovation Initiative. And it's designed really ultimately to reduce carbon emissions. And so although around 40% of the EU emissions come from buildings, 12% of buildings are in public sector ownership. So we thought, that's a reasonably good place to start. And this project really is just looking at helping them to reduce their emissions, as Silvana mentioned, really, reduce their emissions from their own building stock. Okay, so just very, very quickly, it involves 9 countries. And those little things that you probably can't actually see because they're a bit tiny, but those blobs are various countries and the locations within the countries that the project's taking place. We're looking at trying to get 180 buildings on board with around 9,000 employees. And ultimately, we are looking at trying to save 3,100 tons of carbon from this project. Now, it isn't a large-scale retrofit project. It is purely behavior change. We're looking to see how much these buildings can reduce their energy consumption simply by changing the way the employees use energy within their everyday life at work, and it might be turning off monitors or adjusting the brightness. It's all sorts of little tricks, really. But it is always difficult. How do you engage people to do things like this when they're not responsible for the bills? They have no fiscal drive to really engage with this project. And this definitely has been an issue for us. I mean, all of the partners that have been involved in this project have been carrying out behavior change work for years. It's part of their bread and butter, but we mainly do it with households, and they have a vested interest. It's a very different audience when you're working with businesses. So, as I said, a lot of people involved in this project have been working on behavior change for years. We've done a lot on the science behind it. So we've had to use our understanding of behavior change, try to apply it to a business setting. The competition, competition is definitely a key driver here. A lot of the buildings they might be one organization. It's several buildings within one organization, and a bit of friendly competition to try and beat your neighbor is always a real key. They love that. It is designed so that each building has its own team that are trying to engage their colleagues. And having a team rather than an individual, we've discovered, is really important as well, because you're more inclined to do things for your team. You don't want to let your team down. If you're just on your own, then you're more inclined to let things slip. We have provided little incentives for them, given them bits of money that they can then go out and buy either gadgets or chocolate. Actually, has been one of the key incentives in this project. Provide just incentives for engagement amongst staff. Absolutely crucial has been a feedback mechanism, and I'll come back onto that in a minute, actually, with another slide. And we have to make it fun and positive, so that we have to tell them that they can make a difference, that there really is something they can do, and that it is fun. Okay, so just really, really quickly, actually, we've gone into each building. We have created an energy team from amongst the staff. We've supported them as they carry out a building survey to see how, to explain how they use energy, what uses the most. Then we provide a training workshop, which might be on behavior change, as well as how to save energy in the workplace. And then they carry out or pull together an action plan. And and it might be that they'll be looking at ICT one month, they might look at lighting another, they might look at heating another. So they'll be looking at all different things each month in their action plan. And then, as I said, we have this regular feedback mechanism, which looks a bit like this. So this is a screenshot of a web tool that's been designed for the project, and it requires the team to add monthly electricity and gas meter readings. And it's just quite a simple calculation tool that shows them how much they have saved or not on the previous year, 3 years actually. The baseline is 3 years worth of data. Right, but most specifically, I'm here really to talk about the Telford team. So one of the UK partners, or one of the organisations taking part in the UK is the Land Registry. And in particular, the Telford office of the Land Registry have been incredibly keen. They've really taken this project on board. They've got some very keen and motivated members of staff who have, to be fair, they have looked at all the elements of energy usage within the building, but particularly interesting was when they started to look at their computers. And they noticed that despite people who are turning off their computers, they often leave the monitors on. And they might do it if they go away for a meeting or for lunch, or, a lot of the time they'll even do it, just leave them on overnight. And so they carried out a study of the office to see how many were being left on, and regularly they were finding that 14% of their staff were leaving their monitors on overnight. So one of the things that we often, and certainly I think for IT equipment, is it's so much more energy efficient than it ever was in the past. But obviously we use a phenomenal amount more of it than we ever did. But often the arguments against not doing anything or for not doing anything is, it's only a small amount of energy, or my monitor or anything else. What difference can it possibly make, really, just my one monitor? Or I'm only one person, what difference can I really make? It's not really very significant, is it? So if we applied that to the work that the Telford office did, so we gave them, as part of those incentives, we gave them a small socket monitor, and they put on one of their computers, and they discovered that it's not really a computer, it's the monitor. So the standby of their Dell monitors was 1 watt, which, yeah, absolutely, hands down, it's really not that high. And so individually, you'd be looking at 1,000 hours to have 1 kilowatt. And really, to be honest, at that point, you will lose most people. They're thinking, 1,000 hours, that's a really long time. That's not really very relevant, is it? But of course, the Telford office has got 490 computers. So suddenly, your 1,000 hours for 1 kilowatt goes down to 2 hours for 1 kilowatt. And and at that point, I think, okay, it starts to become a bit more relevant, and I can understand that it might be important. But the Telford office is just one of 14 Land Registry offices, and there are 9,000 monitors throughout the Land Registry. So suddenly we've gone from 1,000 hours for one monitor to 7 minutes for all of them. And they fed this information back to their colleagues at the Telford office. Suddenly it does become much more relevant. They can see how their one monitor does start to make a difference. And they did reduce certainly within Telford, they reduced it from 14% down to 5% when they did their survey again. There were only 5% of their employees were leaving the monitor on overnight or when they were going to meetings. Now, a colleague and I, we then sort of started doing some calculations yesterday. Now, I know that the Telford office are really, really keen, and they have been badgered and nagged by their team to make a difference. So we thought, well, what if, 25% of the Land Registry office staff, of their 9,000 staff, if 25% of them were leaving their monitors on overnight, and we're saying a night period is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., so 12 hours. We calculated then that they're starting to lose 27 kilowatt hours per night. Times this by 14p, which is roughly what the tariff is in the UK. So it's costing £3.78 a night. Then if you're looking at weekends, because if they're not turning it off at night, then there's every chance that they probably don't turn it off at the weekend either. Then that goes up to £15.12 for a weekend. And then, that where it says £3.78 plus times 5, it should say plus 5 actually. At the plus £15.12. And basically, at the end of the day, we worked it out that it would be roughly £1,700 a year they are wasting by making sure that people don't turn the monitors off at night or when they go off on breaks, but mainly really this is at night. So it was a little bit of small changes. One person, one monitor, they can't necessarily see the relevance, but small changes made by many people do actually make a difference. So that was it. Thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. I think we're all looking now at our monitor screen though and thinking, of God, what do I do when I leave the office?
Yeah.
That was very interesting. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. Let's see if any of the audience want to say anything. What has been your biggest challenge that Save at Work has faced, and have your challenges changed at all from the onset to now? I mean, you started back in 2015. Yeah. Lots of things change, don't they? But
they do.
Think of anything.
The biggest challenge is always staff engagement. If you've got people that are interested in saving energy or more environmentally aware, then they'll try. But for a lot of people, they go in, they do what they need to do, they go home, and that's when life starts. And so it really is. A lot of it is engaging staff, which is why you have to think of something. As much as we love the fact that it's an environmental project, for a lot of people, this is not what floats their boat. We have to find something else, such as doing something for your team or doing something for fun. But also, and certainly it is the case in the UK, is that the public sector is really struggling. Financially, it's struggling. And it's not as important to them. Whilst, they might make fiscal savings on a project like this, they have some really big fiscal problems at the moment. And it's not their biggest interest.
I'm sensitive to time, so I'm going to take the question that someone from the audience has just come to us, and then we'll close your presentation. Thank you very much, Karen. What will 2017 bring for Save at Work with its major final results?
Well, really we just hope that it will carry on beyond the life of this project. I certainly think a lot of the teams that have started this will carry on, even though the project isn't technically running. But we would like to try and get involved more organisations. We'll produce a set of tools and materials and try and spread these out and get other people to take it on board, really. Not even necessarily public sector. Anybody can do it.
Okay, that's great. Karen, thank you very much for your very interesting intervention. Moving on now to our third and final speaker, we have Thomas Corvaisier. He's the CEO of GreenSpector. Now, after years of seemingly infinite IT resources, software developers are facing new efficiency challenges on their smartphones and IoT devices. Mobile users, as we know, want loads more features, but not less battery life. So, Thomas has introduced the concept of software eco-design, and he's going to tell us how it may help lowering the consumption of IT resources while preserving performance and user experience. So with that, Thomas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Silvana. Yes, it works. So your practice editor, let's go forward with the presentation. Well, just as Karen was saying a few minutes ago, we are living in the IT world, which is often considered as having low or no environmental impact. But when you add up the little watt hours, or the sum up to kilowatt hours and the megawatt hours, IT services are not virtual or immaterial. They need real hardware to operate. And this hardware needs to be built, and that costs a lot from an environment point of view. And when they're built, they need to be fed with electricity, and this hardware is quite hungry. Yes, modern hardware consumes less electricity than some years ago, but there are so many hardware devices. The numbers are so growing at a fast pace, and so the overall consumption of the IT sector is growing. And the University of Dresden estimated that in 2030, the internet could consume as much electricity as all humankind in 2008. So we're talking big figures here. And what is well known also is that the carbon footprint of the IT sector is above 2% of all GHG emissions, which is as much as the aviation sector, and which is growing at a very fast pace. So, and it's not going to get better anyway, because of this growing number of devices. We've all got a smartphone or two in our pocket, and a tablet, on a desktop computer, on a TV set, which is connected to. We've seen growing number of connected devices, which is often called the Internet of Things. Some estimations are talking about 80 billion connected devices in 2020. Each of these 80 billion devices consuming electricity and requiring rare resources to be built. And of course, with these new capabilities, with these devices always available, users, which mean us, we are always asking for better services, more reliable IT services. We want to access anything, anywhere, anytime. So this puts a lot of demand on the software services. So because of this growing demand for software services, there is a growing pattern of deployment of devices, network infrastructure, data centers with more network routers, more servers, and lots of, what happens also is that lots of fully functional hardware pieces are replaced because they appear to lack performance. So Mark Andreessen, which is a well-known IT specialist, said in 2011, software is eating the world because of this growing demand for IT services anywhere, anytime. We are building big infrastructure to answer this demand, and all of this is caused by this demand for software. So what can we do about it? Well, yeah, that's you recognize some well-known figure there. What can we do about it? Why should we do something about it? Heavy software, or too much software, is bad for user experience. So that may be the most important part for the everyday user. When the software is too big, too slow, you lose some productivity, you don't want to engage as a user. Of course, heavy software is, and that's why we are here today, is bad for the resources, it's bad for battery life, it's bad for the availability of the hardware. When you need to plug it in to charge it, then it's not available for mobile use. Of course, the last point is the cost. Too heavy software causes heavier exploitation costs, and this hardware renewal we were just talking about, when you have to change your hardware, whether it be it your PC or your smartphone, because you feel that it's lacking performance because the software has grown bigger and heavier. So there are very important environment impacts behind this. So what can we do about it now? What if we could make the software lighter so that it consumes less resources while, of course, having the same performance or even better performance? That would be great. So we propose to do that by applying the principles of Ecodesign to the software development process. Ecodesign is something well known in the industry for making real-world appliances, but it's not well known for software building. It applies to all the production steps of a software. First, with the requirements analysis, you, as a software maker, as a software developer, you have to change your customer or your internal customer. You have to watch out during the software architecture definition, of course the hardware architecture, and when you're going to develop the software, then you've got to take special caution, and that's where we at GreenSpector we can help. And the last point is the overall management of this. If you can measure it, you can manage it, and we'll see how we can do that. So the main benefits of having lighter software through Ecodesign or improving the efficiency of the software, consuming less resources for the same performance, is first, this is compliant with any CSR policy because you'll consume less energy and you'll be able to make your hardware last longer. If you don't have to replace your tablets or your smartphones because of software, then you can keep them longer and then you'll save lots of environment resources. So that first, it's good for the planet and it's good for your money too, because replacing hardware costs a lot. Second, it's good for battery life, which means that your devices will have more autonomy, more battery life, and also more availability. And third, is good for performance at a large sense, which means better user experience, better engagement, better response time from application, website, or whatever. So what we do at GreenSpector is that we help software developers improve the efficiency of the software they are making. The first part is that we help them to manage this efficiency, to benchmark easily the efficiency of their application and assess their what we call the green maturity or efficiency. How do we do that? Mainly through two features. The first one is that we help the developer to measure energy consumption and resources consumption on real mobile devices. Let's say you are a software developer, you're working on an Android application or website. Now you can check easily through continuous integration or manually. You can check and measure the energy consumption and the resources consumption of your application. And the last one on the right is on the right of the slide is that we automatically detect power draining patterns in the source code. We scan the source code looking for efficiency patterns. We have more than 200 of them, and we check the source code for them. We also have a comprehensive dashboard because, as I said, we assess some kind of what we call an eco score, an efficiency score for the application, and we can help the developer with prioritized recommendation about what they should do to improve the efficiency of the software, be it by improving the source code or the network requests, and also by looking precisely at what the consumption of resources during execution time looks like, and improving that, and helping them to pinpoint the hotspots in the software so as to correct them very efficiently. And we've got the last point is that we have got what we call an energy test cloud, which is a test bench of real mobile devices that are available from a distance for any developer. They can simply send their application to these devices and get the measure result from these real devices. Okay, I'll speed up a bit because I see that time is passing by. A use case is an IT services company that was developing a fully integrated smartphone for defense purposes for the military. And when they called us, the battery life was down to 3 hours. The software was fully functional. That's functionally correct. But the battery life was too short, even for flash or fighting. So with GreenSpector, the development team was able to measure the energy consumption, identify where was what we call the energy bug. And they were able to correct this in some days of work. And then the battery life was up to 11 hours, which is still not enough, but which was a big improvement in this situation they were. And then they integrated a GreenSpector in their continuous efficiency control so as to check this consumption at each release of the software. Last point, just a quick check at technical integration. GreenSpector works in any mobile environment, just from an Android point of view, which means anything that runs on Android device, like Android native application or Cordova Ionic application, any web application, website, and we integrate with continuous integration platform like Sonar, Jenkins. We have plugins for Eclipse, Android Studio, and of course with the testing patterns that we rely upon, like Selenium, UI Automator, Espresso, and so on. And then to have some time for the question, if you have some. My conclusion would be that if you want to avoid building some bloatware, find energy bugs before your users do, because we empower the developer to check for that, which is quite new. If you want to improve energy efficiency and the battery life of the devices where your software is going to run, and if you improve the UX and performance of your software, then software Ecodesign is the way to go. And you see some in the bottom of the screen, some of our customers already. Thank you for your attention.
Thomas, thank you very much. Very interesting intervention. We appreciate that a lot. 4 minutes to go. We have a few questions also from the previous talk too. I wanted to quickly kick off with asking you who your major clients currently are, and if you can tell me why you have these types of clients, if there's a reason a particular type has come in. But I want to actually perhaps link that question to one that's come in from the audience, which you could answer probably too. It says, if you had to give suggestions to an expert in energy management, to which kind of SME should she or he aim at? Just larger than 10 employees or even micro businesses? I mean in terms of market relevance. So over to you, Thomas. What's your thought on that?
Well, our customers for the moment are major companies, whether established corporate companies like you see Orange, the Orange Group, or a Chinese technological leader, or La Poste, which is a postal service in France, or SNCF, which is a train service in France. These big companies have rely heavily on IT services, on mobility services. So they need to provide quality mobile services to their end customers. So this is the first part of our customers, and the other part are those who build the main part of these services, which are the services company like Ethos or TGI, for example, who want to improve their development process for the mobile platforms. So I don't know if this quite answers your question, but
interesting that you have major companies. So yes. Another question, Frédéric, is how do you monitor the level of service? Which driver is the denominator in your KPIs?
Silvana, I think this question was addressed at Frédéric, maybe.
Possibly. Okay. Let's leave that one. Last one then for you, then we'll go back to these other questions. Your visions for 2017, and who you're particularly targeting your products to, and why, if that's changing somewhat.
In 2017, we're going to. We are. I haven't said that we are a startup company. We are a small company. We are 15 at GreenSpector. So we are obviously growing fast, and our targets are to deploy our solutions to main customers in France and in the rest of Europe to start with. If we can do that, we'll be happy with that.
Thomas, if those of you in the audience want to check out GreenSpector, look at them on our marketplace. Quickly moving on, I think we might have, with time's up, but I think we have a few more minutes to spare. Going back to our previous questions, it says, hang on, bear with me. How accurate do you think the results are? And I presume this is the question to the self-assessment tool services. If I may quickly nip in, and then maybe Frédéric, if he's online, can answer the benchmark one. I think at the moment, when we've been building this SAT, we've privileged ease of use and low barriers to entry for the end users. Clearly, this is our most important feature. So you could argue that perhaps accuracy is not marvelous. We're looking clearly on a case-by-case basis. At the moment, it's turning out to be a plus or minus 30% in either direction. So if the SAT gives you 100, it can either be 70 or 130. I don't know if, Frédéric, you agree with that. Our next question was, do you plan to use the tool, going back to the SAT, as a benchmark of the ICT sector and to give these results accessible? Frédéric, do you want to answer that? If not, I can. Let me know.
Yeah, Silvana, I'm back online, sorry. So yeah, regarding this question, for the moment we didn't expect to use the tool as a benchmark of the ICT sector services, because as Silvana just said regarding the previous question, the accuracy of the result is not very strong, because we had to to implement a simplified methodology, and of course, as the model is already set up, you can't be very you can parameterize very fine in the finest way your model. So for the moment, we think it's too early to use this kind of tool as a benchmark tool within the ICT sector.
Okay, Frédéric, yes, I think true benchmarks in ICT are really difficult. They're almost impossible to get. We'd like to build them clearly, and the results not only will be made publicly available, although anonymous to respect privacy of end users, but they will be used by the SAT tools themselves. So that's clearly important. Hang on a second. So the next question, let me just check online. I think we're back to the, is it how do you monitor the level of service, the driver denominator in the KPIs? I don't know whether I understand this question. If it's the level of service in terms of uptime for the self-assessment tool services.
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding the level of service, I think the idea is what is the reference used to express the result?
99.9, isn't it?
Yeah. So
sorry for interrupting.
Oh yeah, no problem. The idea is that the user, when he starts an assessment, the user has to define a functional unit. So which means how much time does he use the service, for how long, etc. So it's the user that set up his own functional unit for the assessment. Okay,
thanks, Frédéric. Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's on the web platform, it delivers the uptime of over 99.9%. I think we have 10 seconds to go. Last slide.